It is an immense privilege to be here with you today. Not just because you're all wonderful, but because 1 month ago today, on March 11th, at 1:10 p.m., I was lying on an operating room table at Mount Sinai Hospital with my chest wide open, and Dr. Adams in there poking around, doing whatever doctors do. And so the fact that I'm here at all feels completely miraculous. Now, what I had was a specific kind of heart problem with my mitral valve. It was leaky. Now, the valve is supposed to make blood go up and not down, in simple terms. Your heart goes up, the blood stays there, it goes in your lungs, you live a long, happy life. Well, my valve leaked. And so when the blood went up, a bunch went right back down. And so my heart started to swell up. And it's called a progressive disease because every month my heart was going to get worse and worse and worse. Not so great. And so when I went in to see the doctor, he said, it's time to fix this thing. Now, you're wondering, okay, this is great, Brian. Thanks for the medical lesson. What does this have to do with me? Well, somebody very wise once said, advertising is the lifeblood of the internet. Okay, he wasn't wise, but it was me. I looked really good back then. And so if advertising is the lifeblood of the internet, doesn't that make ad tech the heart? Isn't the job of the ad tech industry to pump those ads through the industry? And if we have a problem, wouldn't that be kind of a leaky heart? Those leaky pipes we talk about? Isn't it the same thing when we have to pump so hard, pushing ads through our leaky pipes to try to find demand? Don't we have the same problem? A little swelling, if you will. That to me, maybe I'm stretching my analogy here, the issue for us is the harder we work, the more energy we use. The harder we work, the worse the incentives are for all of us. And I think this is something that we have to address in a systemic way if we want to fix the sustainability problems that this industry faces. Now, I want to talk about the leaky heart paradox. I made that up, but it sounds smart. Now, when I say this, I'll tell you what happened when I went to the cardiologist. I walked in, and I had gotten my images, and he said, your heart's swelling, you got to fix it. And I said, that can't be. I feel amazing. In fact, I have data to prove it. I have data to prove to you, Mr. Cardiologist, how great my heart is. I wear an Apple Watch, which I highly recommend. And I walked in, and I said, this is my heart fitness over the past 6 months. Look at it. I am the healthiest I've ever been. Ergo, I don't need to do anything. And he said to me, I'm the cardiologist, you're not. Apple's great. Please don't make life-changing health decisions based on your watch. And I said, okay. This is the paradox. Imagine a balloon that's not too full, and you open the knot. Air kind of comes out, but it's not very hard. Now imagine that same balloon super full of air. When you open up that knot, it all comes out really fast. He said, what you're measuring here is how fast the air's coming out, but it doesn't mean it's working right. The bigger it gets, the better it feels like it works, until a certain point when, like a balloon gets too big, you got a problem. He said, it won't pop, don't worry, but it will stretch so far, it will never work right again. If you get to that point, you've waited too long. So that was terrifying. After my heart surgery, after being in the hospital for 9 days, staring at the wall, trying to figure out how to get back to normal. I walked around the ward a few times and tried to get myself going. And I finally put my Apple Watch back on. And I thought my heart fitness was going to be like 2. I felt horrible. I'm lying in bed for a week. Check this out. That long blank period is when I was in bed, not wearing my watch. But this is crazy. After I put my watch back on, even just barely after my surgery, my heart fitness went up. Fixing my heart actually fixed my heart. I know that sounds crazy. You probably thought it was a placebo. I made the whole damn thing up. But when I actually fix the leak, even though I'm much less fit than I was a month ago, my heart is working better. Now, again, I'm going to draw an advertising analogy. We've all seen these graphs that go up and to the right and say, hey, I did this, it increased revenue, ergo, I'm amazing. What we're not seeing is the stress that we're placing on the whole system. We're not seeing that the harder we pump our fancy ad tech heart, the more we're actually damaging the system. How many people have thought, oh yeah, we lost Safari cookies and we lost Firefox cookies, and oh yeah, we've been regulated, and the other shoe will drop, but not quite yet. What if fixing this would actually make everything work better? That requires a leap of faith, the same leap of faith I had when I went under the knife, which was maybe we can fix this and I'll feel better. But when I wrote my blog post on LinkedIn and said, see you guys on the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro, AKA right here, I don't think I really believed it. This was like a challenge to myself. Like, I bet I can get better by April 11th. I had no idea I would feel this good. I don't think anybody thought I would feel this good, including my doctor, which is great. So let's imagine we do decide that as an industry, we want to fix these leaky pipes. We want to fix our heart. Well, how do we do it? Just like me on the table, I have no idea what happened for those 6 hours. So I asked my doctor, Dr. Adams, I said, hey, tell me about the surgery. And he said, well, it was leaky. It was sort of flapping around. I did 3 stitches and I fixed it. And I was like, well, that took 6 hours? Like, that's 3 stitches. That's amazing. He said, well, we had to, put you out and open you up and do all this stuff and put you in a heart-lung machine and make sure you didn't die. And then 3 stitches, and then close you up and make sure you didn't die and wake you back up and make sure you didn't die. And I'm like, okay, that does sound like a lot. But it was the opening and closing that was the miracle. The stitches were easy. I think we have the same situation here. All of us know how to solve the problem that we have. Any one of you could probably give me 3 stitches worth of great ideas to fix the problem. What we haven't figured out is the scaffolding. We haven't figured out how to do all the things to let us insert those fixes into this industry in a way that will solve the problem once and for all. That's where my metaphor starts to get too complicated, and I'm just going to talk about ad tech for a second because it's a lot easier. Okay? So here's my new metaphor for you. Imagine you have 2 placements on a web page. You've got a placement that works better and a placement that works harder. Now, by harder, I mean it's sending tens, hundreds, thousands of bid requests, trying to find the bidder, trying to maximize revenue. The placement that works better might not even be programmatic. It might actually be a sponsored placement. It might be a direct sold placement. It might actually be a really effective, large ad. But to our ecosystem, those look more or less the same. And in fact, until recently, we didn't have any way to know which placement we were buying. Every one of these placements, both of these, had different identifiers in every system. Imagine your cell phone. You didn't have a phone number. You had a Verizon phone number, a T-Mobile phone number, a Sprint phone number. I'm forgetting one. Oh, AT&T. I know those guys. That would be really annoying. It'd be very difficult to call anyone because you'd have to know what their number was on every one of these. And so you'd never solve basic problems of calling your friends. We had the same problem when we think about placements. Now, I know there's a lot of marketers in the room, a lot of really smart media buyers. Most of you would probably say, I kind of want to buy the placement that works better. But this industry doesn't work that way. By default, we buy the placement that works harder. The only way to fix that is to buy the placements we want. And we have the technology. We can open this whole thing up, if you will, and say, let's address placements, not domains. So this is my first idea for you. We need to use the Tech Lab's Global Placement ID standard when we talk about inventory. We can't just talk about domains. The second thing is we need a way to identify those problematic behaviors that we see placements do. I'll give you an example. ads should render when they're on your screen. Ads should not render when they're way down at the bottom off the screen where you can't see them. That seems pretty reasonable. Definitely, ads should not auto-refresh down there where you can't see them. That's just bad. But that's not what happens. We did a big study of 700,000 placements to identify behaviors. Just those three things I mentioned. We call them problematic placements because it's alliterative and I couldn't think of anything better. And maybe MFA placements would be a reasonable term. These are placements that are doing bad things that are bad for the ecosystem, bad for marketers, bad for the environment. So just these three behaviors. Any guesses what percentage of placements out of these 700,000 exhibited these very basic behaviors? And don't forget, these are all GAM configurations. You can change these right now. If you're a publisher, these aren't mysterious, algorithms. These are literally settings in the ad server. What we found was that 14.3% of the placements we looked at had this behavior set. And they don't overlap with the websites that we've all identified as MFA. And they don't overlap with the websites that we've identified as being high emissions. This is a brand new category of bad behavior that without global placement ID, we had no way to address. Just like I promised I was done with my heart analogy. I was gonna say, just like you couldn't fix my heart if you couldn't open me up. But this is the same idea. If you can't see it and you can't fix it, what's the point of knowing about it? All of this leads to the product I promised I'd announce, which is today, in partnership with ShareThrough, we've taken this data set of all of those placements that we identified as problematic, and we've built a way to take placement level data and integrate it into ShareThrough's platform so that as a buyer, you can not just buy green media products, you can buy placement level green media products. We call this GMP Plus. So you still get MFA blocking, you get high carbon website blocking, and you also block this new category of problematic placements that no one's ever been able to block before. What this means very specifically from a marketer perspective is you're not buying a bunch of stuff that's rendering below the fold. You're not buying these super fast rotating ads. You're actually getting more quality and less carbon, which matters a lot to all of us. All of these behaviors are terrible for the environment. They use a ton of energy, and they don't help anyone. They don't serve anyone's purposes. So this is GMP Plus, available, I think, next week on ShareThrough, which is super exciting. And I guess from my perspective, I don't want to be called the ad tech doctor, so no one write that anywhere. But this is a very simple way to address this fundamental problem that we have as an industry. It's a new approach that makes everything we do more granular, more scalable, and more performant. Okay, so I ruined my funny joke. I was going to say, wouldn't it be great if we had someone from the buy side who, could randomly come on stage right now with a microphone and talk about what this means for an agency? But then I clicked it. So, Kyle, I guess you're the guy. Kyle this is the best title, by the way, I've ever heard, the President of Outcomes at Omnicom. But I invited you up because you and I have been talking about this problem and this opportunity for a long time. And I thought it'd be useful for everyone to hear someone other than me talk about what this means for the industry and for a massive agency.
I run outcomes at Omnicom. Really what that means for me in my buying practices is driving results for our brands. So with that said, buying wasteful impressions is not acceptable, right? We are taking risk on for our brands to drive results. We need to invest in the proper placements and think about what those placements are actually yielding us. There needs to be some sort of return regardless. So performance is key. And also driving those results is something that is a necessity for us. So as you and I have been talking about this, testing these understanding of what those placements are and driving those results is critical for us. And Brian and I have been discussing how there's really never been a solve for this. It's been duct tape, it's been, buckets underneath the leak, and understanding of how can we fix this with algorithms or something of that nature, right? What we are talking about today is actually fixing those pipes, actually understanding what we're buying prior to buying it, driving results for those brands, but also doing better for the ecosystem as a whole. And it's something that we needed as an outcomes division for years, but more importantly, I think what the industry has really needed for years. And I'm dedicated to working with you on building that, and proud to be a part of this with you and actually driving a better ecosystem overall.
One thing I've loved about our conversations, and I think this is important for all of us, I think we've heard this with Seth, and we heard this with Solitaire and many others, is this tension between performance and business outcomes versus doing the right thing for the environment. And I know your mandate is outcomes, but how do you see that tension or potentially the interplay between performance and sustainability?
It's a great question. And honestly, sustainability is an outcome, right? And many of our brands are looking for us to drive that as well as driving that performance. So I see them as working in tandem and really needing to be on the forefront of those decisions and those strategies, right? Because ultimately, running ads that are not driving results are also being wasteful and adding to those carbon footprints and those emissions that we need to be better about and better understanding of prior to running a media investment, right? And being strategic about that. So I think they cross together, correlate directly together, and need to be on the forefront of those strategies and what we're putting together for our brands.
One really cool thing, if you don't know how outcomes work, is that it's really kind of powerful. Your team takes risk on behalf of your clients. So a lot of us imagine that at an agency, it's like, well, it's their money, and so it doesn't really matter. Now, I will say, it's their money, but it's our planet, so it always matters. But what's interesting is it's actually your money, that because you're guaranteeing outcomes, this is personal for you on both levels because it's how you drive results. And so I just feel like it's a case where you can actually take more accountability to do the right thing and potentially drive a lot more profit for your organization at the same time. That seems pretty magical.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Brian said, that's the key factor of outcomes, right? Taking on risk for our brands, right? Putting our money where our mouth is in terms of our partnerships from suppliers, our technology, and really making sure that we can drive those results and taking bets, right? Like coming up with a strategy that is going to be purchased on a different metric than a CPM, right? A cost per acquisition, a sale. And if we incorrectly analyze what that actual price point could be, we have to take that risk, right? We have to invest that money, purchase those placements regardless, and essentially be wasteful in the ecosystem. So we can't do that, right? We need to be strategic prior to the buy. And so driving results is where it all starts from, right? That's the cornerstone of outcomes, but doing so in a way that we can also think about not being wasteful prior to actually investing is critical for us. And that's why GMP Plus and the results that we've been testing and seeing lately are so exciting for me. And really, I can't wait to continue to expand upon that with you and bring this to our brands, right? And grow overall.
Amazing. I was trying to describe to Kyle that Venn diagram I shared, but we hadn't made it yet. Our data science team was doing versions of it. And so we had a really great Venn diagram, which I thought was pretty special, which was, what if green media is lean media? And it was actually just not a Venn diagram. It's the exact same thing, that when you're buying efficiently, it's inherently sustainable. And then you said it was lean, green, and mean.
Because that's really cool sounding.
It just sounded better. And so clearly I shouldn't make Venn diagrams. But I think that's really the opportunity for all of us. This is the Green Media Summit, but it's also the Performant Media Summit. It's the lean, mean, clean Media Summit. We're talking about the confluence of so many trends in the industry. And the fact that all of you are here, standing room only in the back, because you realize, you get the joke. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. Everyone here understands that this is the same exact thing, that the future of this industry has to be green, not because of regulation, not because of ESG mandates, because marketers are smart, agencies are smart. They're going to invest money where they see ROI. And the way to drive ROI is to buy the placements that work better, not the placements that work hard. And to me, that's really the heart of everything we're talking about. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian.
I'll get the joke better next time. Thanks, everybody, to Kyle. All right. There's Kyle. I also screwed up and didn't put his face on the screen. So I got to do a rehearsal next time. So let me close with a couple of thoughts. I was really moved by what Seth Godin said this morning. He said that people are motivated by convenience, people are motivated by affiliation, and people are motivated by status. That our job as marketers, and all of us are marketers, is to find effective stories that connect these tiny little threads with all of us and motivate us to take action. I told you the story of my heart, partially because when I posted on LinkedIn about my heart issue, thousands of people reached out. Every person in this room has a relative, a friend, a loved one who's had a health issue or has a health issue. And the point is that we're all connected in ways that are so much deeper than just a bunch of ad tech craziness or showing up at Cannes together or all the things we do. Not that I don't love those things, but as a community, as people who care, we are so much more powerful than just by the companies we represent. We have a shared purpose and mission. And Seth said that this community is our power. I'd like to ask all of you a favor, and you don't have to do this, but I would really appreciate it. On LinkedIn, just before I came up here, I posted a message telling the story of how last January, Scope 3 and Ubiquity published research that demonstrated that 15% of brand spend was going to made-for-advertising websites. It got some pickup, not huge, but people that mattered saw that research and they began to do something about it. Scope 3 launched GMPs to protect from MFA, but more and more companies began to launch products of Double Verify, IAS, and Jounce, and DeepSea. There's so many people focused on it. The Wall Street Journal wrote an article this morning about made-for-advertising websites. I'm not going to take credit for inventing the term or even for really catalyzing all of it, but I do believe that research, knowing that this was a problem that took money away from the biggest brands in the world, is what catalyzed the change. Jounce reported last week that half of all MFA traffic that they see in the ecosystem has disappeared. We did that. Every bid request coming from those MFA sites was wasted money for advertisers, and it was also wasted carbon. Not just was it carbon, it was carbon that did nothing to drive performance or do any good. I believe our power as a community is to educate. The fancy thing about this problematic placement idea about GMP Plus, it's completely open source. Nothing I'm talking about couldn't be replicated in about 20 minutes if you just walk over to Mike O'Sullivan back there and say, hey, Sincera, can I get some data? He'll even give you a synthetic GPID. That's our secret sauce that I think everyone should use to fix some of the GPID mapping issues. It's not the idea that's powerful. It's the idea that we make it easy and convenient. As easy as calling your favorite share-through person and saying, I want GMP Plus. That is the power. And think about the status and affiliation. We are a community that wants to do the right thing and does the right thing. That, to me, is where we change the world. So my ask is this. You take out your phone and go to LinkedIn, find me, Brian O'Kelly. If we're not connected, let's connect. Repost my post about our research. Comment if you like and say, wow, this guy's great, or this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. If you activate your networks for us, and I mean us as a community, this idea will be as big as MFA in 6 months, and it will be completely solved this time next year. If we can get this entire industry to recognize that using global placement IDs makes the internet more effective and more green, we will see almost instant adoption because you matter, because you can change this industry. I see some pretty big deal people in this crowd. Now, it will make my viral numbers on LinkedIn look awesome too, so I'll take credit for that. It's just a vanity metric, but we all need vanity metrics. But I do think it will have a massive impact. No one is taking out their phone. I'm not kidding. It will make a huge difference. You can do it tonight if you want. But that to me is how we change the world. If we can take these ideas about how we actually act. And Frank said that this morning. He said the point of this summit is not to talk about how great we are, but The point is to find ways we can take action. And I'm giving you two. Repost and buy GMP Plus or anybody else's equivalent products that get rid of these problematic placements. And we will literally change the face of the internet together. Thank you.